Every day, your brain is shaping the person you are becoming. With every choice, every habit, and every thought, you are laying down patterns that either draw you closer to the life you were created for or keep you bound to cycles that steal your potential. Science confirms what Scripture declared long ago, that we are transformed by the renewing of our minds. Your thoughts are not random sparks. They are signals that can rewire your brain, alter your emotions, and reshape your destiny. Ooh. The way you sleep, the light you expose yourself to, the focus you maintain, the discipline you practice, these are not small, disconnected acts. They are powerful levers that, when pulled with intention, can unleash clarity, resilience, and strength you never imagined. Dopamine is not just a molecule of pleasure, it is the currency of pursuit, the divine spark that God placed in the human brain to drive us toward purpose and reward. It is the fuel that transforms a distant goal into something that feels near and urgent. Something that feels near and urgent. Many misunderstand it, thinking it is about the joy of having something, but in truth, dopamine is about the longing, the reaching, the hunger that pulls you forward even before you can see the finish line. When you align your habits with the natural ebb and flow of dopamine, you step into a rhythm of sustained effort that does not depend on fleeting bursts of motivation. You begin to move with the current of your own biology, rather than against it. This is how great missions are fulfilled, through understanding the seasons of pursuit that God has written into our very cells. Your brain is designed to pulse with dopamine in cycles, rising when you anticipate and take steps toward a goal, and then dropping so you may rest and prepare for the next surge. If you push for constant high levels without rest, you burn out and lose your hunger. But if you learn to space your rewards, to let the anticipation breathe, you create a wellspring of energy that renews itself over and over. This is why disciplines of faith and life are built not in one giant leap, but in daily steps, each one feeding the next. Each time you choose the hard thing over the easy way, each time you delay the shallow reward for the deeper one, you signal to your brain that the pursuit is worthy and the dopamine pathways strengthen. You become not just someone who acts in discipline, but someone who finds joy in the pursuit itself. And in that pursuit, you reflect the image of the Creator, who set before humanity the call to press on toward the goal, one not for instant gratification, but for the eternal crown. You begin to understand that the waiting, the working, the striving, all of it is part of the blessing. For in those cycles of effort and reward, there is a holy pattern, a design that makes you resilient against the pull of distraction. You no longer live at the mercy of moods or passing desires. You have learned to channel the God-given chemistry of your brain into a life of unwavering focus. This is where discipline stops being a struggle and becomes a form of worship, a daily offering of your effort toward the vision entrusted to you. The more you walk this path, the more you sense that the journey itself is sacred, and that every step of obedience in the small things builds the strength to stand firm when the greater trials come. Serotonin is often called the molecule of contentment. But it is far more than a simple signal of happiness. It is the quiet anchor that holds your mind steady in a storm. It is the chemical thread that ties gratitude to stability, patience to peace, and self-control to joy. When serotonin levels are healthy, your perspective widens. The chaos of life feels less like an attack and more like a challenge you are equipped to face. But when they fall, anxiety and restlessness creep in, and discipline feels like a mountain you can't climb. God designed serotonin to work in harmony with your habits, your environment, and your thoughts. It is influenced by how you move your body, the light that reaches your eyes, the way you connect with others, and the posture of your heart toward gratitude. A simple walk in the morning sunlight, an intentional moment of reflection on God's faithfulness, an act of kindness toward another. Each of these is like a stone dropped into the pool of your mind, sending ripples that raise serotonin and steady your emotional waters. This is why Scripture repeatedly calls us to remember, to give thanks, to encourage one another. These are not just moral niceties. They are commands woven into our biology. Serotonin teaches us that lasting discipline is not built by sheer willpower alone, but by cultivating the inner stability that allows you to remain faithful even when life is unpredictable. The enemy's tactic is often to destabilize you, to shake your confidence so you lose sight of your purpose. But a mind fortified by gratitude, light, movement, and fellowship resists those assaults. In this way, serotonin becomes more than a chemical it becomes a shield, Bunliuan. Each day you choose habits that nourish it, you are reinforcing the walls of your inner fortress. Over time, you discover that the storms may still rage, but they no longer move you from the course God has set before you. You are anchored, rooted, and able to advance steadily, not because the winds are calm, but because your foundation is firm. This is the quiet power of serotonin. It does not shout. It does not surge. It simply holds you steady long enough to finish the race set before you. And in that steadiness, you find the space to hear God's whisper and the strength to keep walking in obedience. Step by steady step, dopamine is the spark of anticipation, the divine gift that pulls you toward the future God has called you to. It is not merely the thrill of reward. It is the forward-facing compass that draws your eyes beyond the present moment toward what could be. When aligned with God's purposes, dopamine becomes a holy motivator, urging you to take the next step, to rise again after a fall, to believe that there is something worth pressing toward. Yet when misdirected, it becomes a trap, driving you into cycles of empty pleasure that leave you hollow. This is why the enemy seeks to hijack your dopamine, to flood your mind with counterfeit rewards so that your energy is drained, chasing what does not satisfy. But the Creator designed dopamine to respond most powerfully to effort in pursuit of meaningful goals, especially those anchored in faith, service, and growth. When you set your mind on things above, every small victory releases a pulse of encouragement that fuels the next act of obedience. Even in seasons where the reward is far off, the pursuit itself releases enough momentum to keep you moving. That is why Scripture calls us to run the race with endurance. It is not just poetic, it is profoundly biological. Each act of faithful effort, each moment of resisting temptation, each time you choose long-term purpose over instant gratification, you are training your dopamine system to align with righteousness. Over time, this rewiring shifts your desires. You begin to crave the process of becoming more like Christ more than you crave the fleeting highs of distraction. And as your brain learns that true fulfillment comes from perseverance in God's calling, you find yourself propelled forward, not by sheer willpower alone, but by a deep internal hunger for what is eternal. Hunger for what is eternal. In this way, dopamine is no longer a restless master. It becomes a faithful servant, driving you toward the life God intended. Step after determined step, until your journey itself becomes the reward. Neuroplasticity is the brain's God-given ability to change, adapt, and be renewed, a living testimony that transformation is always possible. It is the biological reflection of the spiritual truth found in the renewal of the mind. Every thought, every habit, every decision carves a pathway in the brain, like a river shaping the land through steady flow. At first, the grooves may be shallow, easily redirected, but with repetition they deepen, becoming highways for your thoughts and actions. This is why Scripture warns us to guard our minds, for what we think on shapes the person we become. The world will try to etch fear, lust, greed, and doubt into your neural pathways, but the Spirit of God calls you to overwrite those patterns with faith, hope, love, and discipline. Faith, hope, love. And the miracle of neuroplasticity is that even the most hardened patterns are not beyond repair. Through focused effort, prayer, and intentional action, the brain can reroute its circuits just as the heart can be turned back to the Lord. When you meditate on truth, speak life over your circumstances, and take small, consistent steps toward righteous living, you are not just making spiritual progress. You are physically rewiring your brain to desire the things of God. This process is not instantaneous. It is forged in the furnace of patience, trial, and perseverance. But each time you resist the pull of the old nature and choose the new, each time you respond to temptation with worship instead of compromise, you are laying new tracks for the mind to follow. And as these pathways strengthen, what once felt impossible becomes second nature until obedience flows as naturally as breathing. Neuroplasticity is the Creator's whisper in your biology saying, you can change. You can renew. You can be transformed. It is His built-in grace woven into your neurons, a reminder that no matter how many years you've walked a certain way, today can be the day your mind begins to walk a new path toward life. Self-regulation is the God-ordained discipline that bridges the gap between knowing what is right and actually doing it. It is the steady hand that tames the impulses of the flesh and redirects them toward the will of God. In the body, it is the harnessing of the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain designed for judgment, foresight, and intentional choice, over the limbic system, which cries out for instant gratification. Spiritually, it is the same battle Paul described when he said, "Discipline my body and bring it into subjection." Self-regulation is not about crushing desire, but transforming it. Not about cold restraint, but about warm, deliberate alignment with the purposes of heaven. Every time you pause before speaking in anger, every time you choose patience over panic, every time you turn your eyes from what is unholy and fix them on what is pure, you are exercising this God-given faculty. Quote, "It is built like a muscle, weak at first, but strengthened through use. And the more it is trained, the more it becomes a shield against the storms of emotion and temptation." The brain responds to this training by building stronger neural connections for restraint, making it easier to choose the narrow way, even under pressure. Yet self-regulation is not fueled by willpower alone. It is empowered by the Spirit, who brings both conviction and comfort, correction and encouragement. Without him, self-control can turn into self-reliance, brittle and breakable under strain. But when surrendered to his leading, it becomes a fortress, a constant readiness to respond in obedience, no matter the circumstance. This is why fasting sharpens the mind, why prayer steadies the soul, and why worship redirects our desires. Each one trains the heart and mind to listen to the higher call above the noise of the moment. The world will tell you to follow your feelings, but the kingdom calls you to lead them. Self-regulation is the quiet authority that steps in between impulse and action, and in that sacred space, chooses the way of life. Delayed gratification is the sacred art of sowing now, for a harvest you cannot yet see, of exchanging the fleeting pleasures of the moment for the eternal rewards promised by God. It is the posture of faith that believes what he has said will come to pass, even when every sense longs for immediate satisfaction. In the language of the brain, it is the strengthening of neural pathways that prioritize long-term goals over instant rewards, rewiring your mind to value what truly matters rather than what merely sparkles in the present. But in the language of the Spirit, it is the echo of Hebrews 11, those who welcome them from a distance, trusting God's timing over their own. Delayed gratification is not deprivation. It is alignment. It is the discipline of the farmer who tills and plants in spring without rushing to dig up the seed to see if it's growing. It is the restraint of the runner who paces themselves, knowing the race is long and the prize is not given at the halfway point. But every time you say no to a shortcut that compromises your integrity, every time you resist the lure of the easy path for the sake of righteousness, you are training your soul to trust the pace and plan of God. Neuroscience tells us that the more often you delay gratification, the more the brain builds resilience against impulsive urges. Scripture tells us that those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. These two truths meet in the life of the believer, where patience is not passive but powerful, not empty but expectant. You learn to endure seasons of silence, to resist the itch for immediate answers, to press forward in obedience when there is no visible proof of progress. And in doing so, you discover that the joy that comes from God's perfect timing far outweighs the thrill of momentary indulgence. For what he has prepared is not just good, it is eternal.